Today we're going to discuss the NFL's 2010 All-Decade team that came out earlier this week. Welcome back to Amateur Hour Sports. I'm Trent with my co-host Jake.
I think that is sort of his defining game as a QB.
I just have to say, never go all in on the Raiders ever.
So there's a lot of big names on the list. We got offense, defense, special teams, and two coaches. So we're going to start off going with the offense, and then we'll talk about maybe a few snubs that we thought should have been on the list. And we'll go down the list on the defense and a couple snubs there. And so let's kick it off with the offense, Jake. A couple quarterbacks on there, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. Do you think those two guys were deserving to be on this list?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think Tom Brady's won 3 Super Bowls this decade. Can't argue with him on there, obviously. And Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he has just played amazing this whole decade. I don't think they've had one losing season this whole decade, and that's unheard of. I mean, yeah. Tom Brady, I think Tom Brady has less, but that's why he's also on the list. But like only one losing season is incredible, and you just know how incredible and how highly I think of Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback. I think he's the most talented quarterback in the NFL.
And he had 2 MVPs this decade too, Aaron Rodgers did. Yeah, there's a lot to like there.
And I honestly, I think there should have been 3 quarterbacks just from the numbers of all the other positions. I think they should have at least included 3 quarterbacks. So I think they should have put, in my opinion, they should have put Russell Wilson in as the 3rd quarterback just because he revolutionized the quarterback position in the 2010s and he's got a Super Bowl. So
if we were adding another quarterback, I would probably argue like Drew Brees should be on there. He doesn't have a Super Bowl this decade. I think they won in 2009. But just from a pure numbers standpoint, he's probably the leading passer. I don't really know off the top of my head, but he definitely has a lot of numbers. Let's keep going down the list, though. For running backs, we got 3 out of the 4 were former Buffalo Bills with Sean Lynch, LaShawn McCoy, and Frank Gore. But Adrian Peterson also falls on that list. From a running back standpoint, I don't think there's anybody else you could really add. Like those are the 4 of the decade.
Yeah, when you think of the 2010s, I definitely think of Adrian Peterson and Frank Gore, just 2 journeymen who've been there for a long time. But, it's crazy to think Marshawn Lynch started his career in Buffalo. Yeah. And a lot of people didn't think he'd ever, when I saw him play in Buffalo, I thought he was kind of a lazy player, not really going to pan out.
He wasn't a good fit for Buffalo, but
yeah.
I mean, talent-wise, he popped off in Seattle for sure. So moving down to the receivers, we got Antonio Brown, Larry Fitzgerald, Calvin Johnson, and Julio Jones. Again, I don't have any arguments with these, like at least with the running backs and receivers. Like Antonio Brown has the craziest stats this decade. Aside from the off the field stuff, Larry Fitzgerald, I mean, he's been doing it for so long. He has, I think, more tackles than drop catches. Mm-hmm. Calvin Johnson, when he was playing, however, he had a short career, but he was probably in my mind the greatest wide receiver playing at that time. And then Julio Jones is probably the greatest who's currently playing right now.
Larry Fitz is like Frank Gore is the running backs.
Right, totally.
He's just been consistently good this whole decade. Can't argue with that. I mean, got to respect the hell out of that. And Julio Jones, like you said, I think he's the most comparable to Calvin Johnson as just domination wise and against defenders. Yeah. Like he's always up on those 50-50 balls are usually always his.
Yeah. And he's going to be double teamed. Their best cornerback's going to be match up on him. Like he's such a good threat.
I think they both have 300-yard games too.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that's
over 300-yard games. Yeah, like that's a small community right there.
Moving on to the tight ends, Rob Gronkowski and Travis Kelce make the list. We talked about it beforehand. You could maybe argue like Antonio Gates or Jason Witten or something, but when you look at the sheer numbers and like, again, same thing with Calvin Johnson with Gronk. Shorter career, but I mean, Gronk was the most dominant tight end. I think probably the league's history in my mind.
Yeah,
Travis Kelce has crazy numbers too.
Yeah, I mean, Rob Gronkowski is like Jason Witten on steroids, like times 10, like in a system. Like he was, he was Tom Brady's #1 guy for how many seasons? But
he's unstoppable. I mean, he was unstoppable.
I know we had like an argument beforehand about Travis Kelce because I was like, oh man, he hasn't played that long, and you're like, well, he's 30. He's played that many seasons, and then we looked at the numbers, and I mean, the guys. If you look at his stats, they're just incredible. Because I was trying to say Jason Witten, but man, dude, Travis Kelce is having a career.
He's had over 1,000 yards the past 4 seasons, and the 2 seasons before that, he had like 860 yards.
And a Super Bowl championship
this past year. He had a 1,300-yard receiving year, which I think was last year with Mahomes, or 2 years ago, I guess now. Mahomes, that 50 touchdown, 5,000 yards passing. But, I mean, dude, both of those guys, they lucked out with, I guess, Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. But still, talent-wise, I mean, you can't argue with those two.
Oh, no, you can't.
So, moving down the list, we got the tackles and guards, the offensive line. Any of those guys stick out to you?
I mean, there's a reason why, this decade we always were talking about Dallas Cowboys line. I mean, they just got on here. We have Tyron Smith and then Zach Martin at offensive guard, and just 2 guys on the all-decade team. Out of 32 teams, and you only have a set amount of players. Like that's incredible. Like I mean, that's kudos to the Dallas Cowboys front office for. Putting that. No wonder why DeMarco Murray had such a successful career there, and Zeke's having a really great career. And Dak's been able to come in and play.
No, I agree. Sorry to cut you off. But of the decade, I mean, it's hard to argue the Cowboys didn't have the best offensive line this entire decade.
Yeah. I mean, they were just the big sexies up front.
Yeah, the big sexies. I like that. So let's move on to the defense and the defensive big sexies. So moving on to the D-line, we got Calais Campbell, Cameron Jordan, Julius Peppers, J.J. Watt, Geno Atkins, Fletcher Cox, Aaron Donald, and Ndamukong Suh. Out of those guys, to me, J.J. Watt really sticks out. I remember that couple-year run that he had was just incredible. I don't know that even like Aaron Donald, I think is really good, but that stretch by J.J. Watt, I think is probably the best stretch this decade from any of those guys.
2 defensive player of the years, right?
Yeah.
He had such a good stretch. He was incredible. I mean, absolutely taking over games from the defensive standpoint, which is always what you like strive for with your guys. Like that was a great feat. A lot of people don't realize. I mean, we had this. I was like, all right, did Julius Peppers have a really good like career in the 2010s? And you're like, I don't know. Let's count up the sacks. And the man had 87 sacks in his career in the 2010s. And I mean, like, that's those short feet.
Yeah, those are some numbers.
Those are some numbers. I don't remember him being that he was kind of under the radar. Yeah, like you never really, he was just under the radar guy. Yeah, so I mean, I don't have any issues with any of the players on this list. I think they're all deserving of it.
Yeah. Let's move on to the linebackers. Keep in mind, a couple of these guys you could put as the end, but they have them listed as linebacker for now. Chandler Jones, Luke Kuechly, Khalil Mack, Von Miller, Bobby Wagner, Patrick Willis, who retired early. I mean, looking at that list, Chandler Jones has some crazy sack numbers, but Luke Kuechly, I mean, I guess all of them. They're all like, the premier linebacker of this decade. Like Von Miller, Khalil Mack are probably the 2 best pass rushers right now, and then Chandler Jones is 3rd right behind him. Bobby Wagner and Luke Kuechly, I think, are probably the 2 best. Luke's not going anymore, but I was going to say currently playing. And Patrick Willis cut his career short early, but, I mean, he was a dominant linebacker.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if besides J.J. Watt, if you had put all these guys at DN and put their position at DN, they would have been over Julius Peppers, Cam Jordan, Calais Campbell. That's how dominant they are.
Right. They could double at linebacker and DN.
Yeah. I mean, they're way more versatile than those guys. I mean, Khalil Mack I'd say he's in his prime right now. I mean, he just started his prime like probably 2 seasons ago.
Right.
And Von Miller, I mean, he might be edging out of his prime, but he's still just scary guy to have against you. So, but yeah, I want to hit on Bobby Wagner because he came in with Russell Wilson when they first got drafted, and it's just kind of crazy how they were able to create 2 different guys, leaders on offense and defense that are just studs. And Bobby Wagner, he negotiated that big contract. He deserved all the pennies for it because he's all over the place. Just a great linebacker.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of Patrick Willis, honestly.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But if there's one thing
more athletic though.
Yeah,
and that's scary. If Patrick Willis was like Ray Lewis,
Yeah,
Patrick and Bobby Wagner's like Patrick Willis but can move.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just one thing that sticks out with all those linebackers was consistency. Like they've all been doing it the entire length of their careers.
Yeah.
They were dominant guys.
Yeah, bold prediction. Darius Leonard will be on this list.
I like that.
Where it comes on the
next
I like
one. That. Yeah, he's a young stud.
He gets a lot of tackles like Kuechly and Wagner for sure.
Tremaine Edmonds might too. You never know. The guy's 21 years old.
Yeah, he's a young buck.
All right, so let's move to the DBs. We got Patrick Peterson at cornerback, Darrelle Revis, Richard Sherman. For safeties, Eric Berry, Earl Thomas, Eric Weddle, Chris Harris, and Tyrann Mathieu get the DB tag. Starting with the cornerbacks, Patrick Peterson, Darrelle Revis, Richard Sherman. I mean, I feel like I'm saying this for every position group, but I feel like they really nailed it with those three.
Yeah. You have some of the start of the decade, like Revis was the start of the decade. He's the guy. And then I think you would move to probably Richard Sherman, middle of the decade. And then Patrick Peterson's kind of been like behind both of them the whole time, I would say. He hasn't been like the premier, like
he hasn't
cornerback of the league. Yeah.
Out in Arizona too.
I agree. But yeah, I think Richard Sherman, I mean, he had those Legion of Boom was just incredible run for them. Yep. So I have no qualms about this either.
Yeah, keeping with the Legion of Boom, we got Earl Thomas at safety, Eric Berry with the Chiefs, and Eric Weddle. I don't know about Eric Weddle. I mean, he has the tackle numbers. I suppose he's deserving. I would just maybe argue, sticking with the Legion of Boom, that Cam Chancellor could be on there.
Yeah.
Should be on there. Or a lot of people were griping for Harrison Smith too.
Yeah, I think Harrison Smith probably should get it over him. Cam Chancellor did retire early, but yeah, he had those 3 years where he was like bam Cam, like just coming down the line.
Oh, dude, I miss having him in the league.
Oh yeah, and Eric Berry, it was like he's on this list and he's missed like a whole season with cancer. Like, that's how good he was and dominant.
Totally.
And hopefully everything's good with his health. But like he coming out of college, he was like Tebow on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that. On Tennessee. But yeah, Earl Thomas is him going to Baltimore probably was like the smartest move of his career. Get out of Seattle where you were part of the Legion of Boom, and he's rebranded himself, and he's still just as good. Balling out.
Yeah, totally. And then Chris Harris and Tyrann Mathieu. Though both of those guys seem like a stretch for me. I would say Chris Harris over Tyrann Mathieu, but if you're looking at the sheer numbers wise, like Stephon Gilmore, I think has been deserving, if not. I mean, he just won Defensive Player of the Year. He was 2-time first team All-Pro, and he has more picks than Chris Harris. So in my mind, I don't really get why Chris Harris is on there. I would personally go Gilmore over him, and probably even Tyrann Mathieu.
I think, honestly, you could honestly take them both off the list.
Yeah.
Like, they don't really need to be here. I mean, I feel like it's like a stretch for them to be on the list. Like, both as general, you don't even need to replace them with anybody.
Right. Well, I guess we picked on Eric Weddle, but you could probably put Cam Chancellor and Harrison Smith over Tyrann Mathieu and Chris Harris.
I mean, Tyrann Mathieu's got that big name, but, I mean, he really hasn't
other than
spectacular.
I mean, he won a Super Bowl this year, but
but like nothing really sticks out to me. Like he doesn't have a signature play or anything. But he's dynamic. He can play both corner and safety, which is also value for him.
Right. So then moving on to special teams, we got a couple punters: Johnny Hecker, Shane Leckler. Kickers, we have Steven Gostowski, Justin Tucker. Punt returners: Tyreek Hill, Darren Sproles. Kick returners: Devin Hester and Cordarrelle Patterson. I know you want to touch on a few guys, so I'll just let you.
Justin Tucker is incredible. I mean, if you look at his stats, he's 91% his whole career in field goals, which is ridiculous for a kicking standpoint.
Yeah.
And he's got a boot on him. So I wanted to hit on that. And then, my man Devin Hester, one of the probably the greatest returner of all time.
Yeah. He really changed the game with punt
the
returns and kick returns.
Yeah. And now kickers just kick it out of the back of the end zone.
Yeah.
It might be safety-wise, but, like, before they did the safety, kickers were trying to kick it out of the back of the end zone against him. Yeah. That just changed the whole course of history of the NFL. Which
I'll never forget that Super Bowl.
First play from scrimmage.
Yeah. They stupidly kicked it off, and he hit it for a touchdown. Yeah, that was awesome. And then finally, we're going to wrap it up with coaches. We got Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll. Bill Belichick won, like we said with Tom Brady, won 3 Super Bowls this decade. Pete Carroll won 1.
Which could have won 2.
Could have won 2. Should have won 2.
Should have won 2.
But, yeah, I mean, I think they're both deserving to be on this list. I guess maybe you could maybe argue maybe they did AFC and NFC, which is probably honestly what they did. But I was going to say, like, maybe like Mike Tomlin could sneak on the list if you expanded it.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin would probably be the only guy. I mean, it's just hard to find a coach who's been there for a substantial amount of years.
Right.
I mean, like a substantial, but like a successful.
The whole decade.
Yeah. So.
I mean, we're not putting on Marvin Lewis or anything, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
you could put Andy Reid.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he had success both in Philadelphia and
that's a good one. That's a good one. I wonder if he'll be considered, since he won it in 2020, for the next decade. But yeah, I think Andy Reid could definitely be. You could definitely argue Andy Reid, unless they have the AFC and NFC. But.
Yeah, I mean, I have no issues with either or. They both are still successful coaches, and they're in the league for a reason still. So. Yeah, so I mean, as a whole, I think me and Trent we hit on all the positions, and it's going to be interesting to see these new guys coming in and these guys who like Pat Mahomes, and see if they end up on the next decade list, which I'm sure they will. But
would you? Let me ask you this: no matter what he does in the next decade, would you put Pat Mahomes on it?
Yes, like I said with how Russell Wilson changed the game, Pat Mahomes is currently changing the game. Making athletic guys who throw 40, 50 times a game in college are coming in the NFL. Like, just he's making the West Coast offense great, and I definitely think that's where we're shifting. And regardless of what he does, like these past 2 seasons, he is like solidified himself as like incredible.
I like that.
Opinion.
Bold take.
Yeah,
I like it.
What about you? Are you different? You don't think so?
I have to see it for more than just 2 years. I mean, sure, he won a Super Bowl, had a great year the year before, 50 touchdowns. I mean, that's probably honestly one of the best single seasons by a quarterback in recent memory I can think of. But I don't think that solidifies him in the next decade's quarterback.
I think we're in the midst of a new Brady-Belichick combination.
Yeah,
Mahomes and Andy Reid.
Yeah, I think you give him a couple more years of him, maybe definitely another Super Bowl would solidify him, but like, a couple more years of putting up, crazy numbers, whatever, them winning games. I mean, definitely he could be in the mix.
Definitely be in the mix for sure.
All right, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.